Okay, just wanted to give you a quick shot of the rags and towels stuffed in to the engine so that I can begin cleaning. I've got all the ports and everything stuffed, so no debris is going to get down into the engine. So I'll get to cleaning in a minute. That's just a tedious process. You just want to use carb cleaner or brake cleaner, and you got to get these surfaces squeaky clean so that the new gaskets will seal properly. You don't want to scrape real aggressively with anything metal, because you can gouge these surfaces and then you won't get a good seal. I like to go around and wipe it clean with a rag, and then stubborn residue I will use like a really sharp razor blade, but you got to hold it perfectly flat, and just be really careful if you're going to do that. You don't want to scratch the surface. So again, it's just a tedious, slow process. I'm not going to show much of that. I'll show you a shot after it's clean and done, but I wanted to give you a quick before look. So anyway, I'm going to get cleaning, and before I do that, I'm going to go open up the intake and take a look and see if I can figure out what happened, why this failed. So I'll show you a quick look at that, and then I'll get everything cleaned up, and I'll be back when I'm done. Alright, so here is the manifold removed from the truck. This is how it sits towards the front of the vehicle, and found something interesting on the bottom. So that it's a two-part manifold. This is the upper part, and on the bottom there's a plate that attaches to the bottom of it and seals it off and keeps the internal of the engine separated from the manifold so that oil and stuff doesn't get sucked up in here. And this is a common issue with these trucks, especially the second generation Rams. I guess that they came with a thin steel plate from the factory for the bottom plenum plate, and the manifold itself is aluminum, and I guess the two materials expand and contract at different rates, and because the steel was so thin, it would eventually just warp with temperature changes and allow the gasket to fail. So what I had done was installed this. I ordered this 1/4-inch aluminum plate from Hughes Engines. They send you the plate and the bolts and the gaskets and everything, and that's supposed to solve the issue with the two different materials. But I noticed something interesting here. This gasket is totally shot. And again, I just put this in 9 months ago. I don't know what caused this, unless maybe these bolts weren't torqued properly or were over torqued. But in any case, the gasket failed here, and I'm sure that's exactly where most of my leak was. And again, this plate sits over top of the internals of the engine and separates the air getting sucked in through the intake and going into the combustion chambers. So if you've got a gap in this joint right here between the intake and the plenum plate, you're going to have oil getting sucked in between them, and that's exactly what I had going on. I don't see too many obvious issues anywhere else. Maybe that corner right there where the gasket is kind of oozed out a little bit, but right there is pretty obvious. So anyway, I'm going to have to pull all these plenum bolts out, clean up the gasket surface, put the plate back on with a new gasket, and I got to clean up all this mating surface where this connects to the engine block. So I got a lot of cleaning to do. I'll clean out the inside as well. It's not too bad, really. It's not filthy, since I just did this recently, but I'll give it a good scrub down. You know, once you take that bottom plate off, you can get to the inside very easily. So I have a lot of cleaning to do. Just wanted to show you a quick before shot of the intake itself, and I'm going to clean everything up, and I'll be back with you when everything's ready to go back in the engine. I'm also going to replace the fuel injector O-rings at some point, so I'll show you a quick clip of that as well. So we'll get to cleaning and be back when I'm ready to reinstall. Alright, I got the plenum plate off, and I think I discovered the root of my problem. When I got to remove these two bolts on this corner, they were hardly even finger tight. So obviously those had backed out and was allowing oil to get sucked in there, and that gasket was probably, you know, vibrating a little bit and just got torn apart. So anyway, that was my issue, and stupid me, I didn't use thread locker last time. So that I will certainly be doing that this time. I've got some blue Permatex thread sealant, so I'll be installing that with all the bolts, and hopefully I'll never have to do this job again. So I just thought I'd point that out, since that was likely the cause of my problem. So don't make the same mistake I did. Alright, I'm going to get back to cleaning now. Alright, I've got the manifold cleaned up now, and I'm ready to reinstall the plenum plate. I hit it really good with a bunch of brake cleaner, and then I went over it with my pressure washer to get any stubborn spots off. It's pretty clean now. I probably need to make another pass or two on the gasket surface where it bolts to the engine, but as far as the plenum plate, I'm happy with this. I'm ready to reinstall it now. So here's the plate. I've got that cleaned up as well. I've got my new gasket ready, and according to the service manual, which you can see here, you can see the bolt tightening order 1 through 15. You start in the middle and work your way out sort of in a spiral fashion, and we make 2 passes. The first pass, we tighten all the bolts 1 through 15 to 48 inch-pounds in this pattern, and you go back through in the same pattern and tighten them all down to 84 inch-pounds, and then you go back through one last time to make sure they're all still at 84 inch-pounds, same pattern. So that's the idea. This time I think I'm going to use some blue thread locker on the threads, so that hopefully I won't have an issue with the bolts backing out and the gasket failing like I did this time. I'd like to not have to do this repair again. So anyway, that's the idea. Let me get the gasket in place. I'll get all the bolts finger tight and we'll tighten them down. Alright, my new gasket is in place. Just ready to set the plate on top, like so, and we'll center it up and ready to put our bolts in. Okay, I've got the plenum plate reinstalled and torqued down, and I'm ready to go ahead and put the manifold back in the truck. So I'll probably make 1 or 2 more passes with a rag and some cleaner, and then we'll get it back in the truck. Alright, I've got the engine block cleaned back up where the gaskets sit, and I'm ready to go ahead and put the manifold back in. Just need to pull my rags out, get everything situated. And I've also got, I took 4 of the old manifold bolts and cut the heads off, and I'm going to use those sort of as an alignment stud. I'll probably put them in maybe this hole, that hole, and then 2 towards the back to help me drop the manifold straight down. So let me get these rags out of the way, and then I will get the gaskets in place. I'll have to use some RTV in the corners here, and then the corners in the back, and I'll get those studs in place and drop the manifold on. So let me get situated and we'll move on. Alright, I'm ready to put the manifold back in now. I'm getting prepped now. You can see as I mentioned, I cut off 4 of the old bolts, cut the head off, and I'm going to use them as an alignment dowel. If my camera will focus, you can see I cut a slot in the top of the bolts. There we go, so that I can unscrew them with a flathead screwdriver once I set the manifold in place. So I've got all 4 of those positioned, got everything cleaned, and I'm going to do a dry run now. I'm going to set the manifold down over these just to make sure that it'll clear everything. I want to make sure that there's no cables or anything in the way. So anyway, let me do a test fit here. I'll show you once I have it in place. Then I'll pull it back out and put the gaskets in place, get the silicone laid out, and we'll drop this thing in once and for all. Alright, the test fit went well. I was able to drop it in place without any trouble. You can see the alignment studs. I had to slot them because they sit down below the level of the manifold, so I couldn't remove them by hand. I'll need a screwdriver to take them out. But anyway, I'm ready to lay the gaskets out, get everything ready. So let me get the gaskets in place and I'll show you a quick clip right before I drop the manifold in the last time. Alright, you can see I've got the gaskets in place on the side and I've applied my bead of RTV silicone. The service manual said to make it about 5 millimeters or 0.2 inches, so I cut the tip to just under 1/4 inch in diameter, and I've got it installed. Oops, my flash just turned off, but anyway, I think you get the idea. I used black Permatex RTV. It's supposed to have the best oil resistance. Last time I had used orange, and I'm wondering if that contributed to my failure. Obviously I had an issue with the plenum bolts too, but anyway, now I just need to put the front and back portions of the gasket in. This one goes back there by the distributor, and this one goes up front just like that. And there's these little studs, rubber studs on either end that mount into these holes here that align them. So make sure these holes are cleaned out. I had one back here that had some old silicone RTV that was dried up inside of it. I had to take a small drill bit and just stick it in there by hand and remove that so I could get the alignment peg to fit down in the hole. So anyway, this is the moment of truth. I'm going to put those front and back gaskets on and set the manifold in place, and I'll be back with you shortly. Okay, I think that went pretty well. I was able to drop it straight down over those alignment bolts that I'd put in. Manifold's in place. Just need to follow the torque instructions now in the manual. It says to follow the sequence shown here. I'll give you a shot of that. There's 12 bolts total. Follow the sequence. The steps are tighten bolts 1 through 4 to 72 inch-pounds first. Then tighten bolts 5 through 12 to 72 inch-pounds. Then you go back and check in sequence that all are at 72. And then you go back again and tighten them down to 12 foot-pounds in sequence. And then you go back and check all of them again to make sure they're at 12 foot-pounds. And again, I'm going to be using some blue Loctite, or this is actually Permatex thread locker blue, so that these don't back out. So before that RTV sets up, I need to go ahead and get going. Let me torque these down, and I'll be back with you when it's all torqued. Okay, I've got the manifold bolted back in. I've checked the torque on all the bolts, and it's good to go. So I can start putting everything back together now. Basically, it'll just be the reverse process of how I took it out, but I'll still show the steps required. And there's a couple other parts I'm going to replace when I put things back in. So I'll have to get started on that tomorrow, but anyway, off to a good start.